there's three big components that why a person develops addiction. One of them is genetics, and that's one thing I think it's worth mentioning today. That there's no coincidence that people who suffer from addiction have a family history of addiction. You know, it does tend to be kicked down family lines, you know, and not necessarily just learned behavior, but genetically a strong responder. You know, just as one person may be allergic to penicillin, another person may be a strong responder to alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, opiates, whatever. And when they're a strong responder, addiction just takes off in them like throwing a match into a bucket of gasoline. Now, as far as substance use, you know, and some of the early things with that, you know, we have to keep in mind the other two factors of the three factors of what a person develops addiction. Social, you know, what they do, who they run with. So that translates for kids, you know, is like, let's take a good look at their friends. Are they involved in sports? Are they doing some positive community activities? Do they go to church? Are they involved with the family? How many times a week do they sit down and have dinner with the family? You know, that type of stuff. Environmental, you know, of course, where a person lives and exposure to drugs and drinking can play a factor in that. And then, of course, the third factor is psychological. So a kid growing up with some real challenges, you know, could be some loss, some trauma, some broken home type stuff. You know, those can be risk factors for being drawn to using drugs.
When I look back on my childhood, I think that I was predisposed to addictive behaviors because of the history that my family had with substance abuse. I think that my first remembrance of addictive behavior was I was raised by hippies, and I wasn't allowed to eat like sugary foods and stuff like that. So I remember going to my friend Chris's house and stealing like Fruit Loops and sugary cereals in plastic bags and taking them back to my house and like sneaking them in my room and eating them. And I think that was kind of addictive behavior because I would do that a lot.
I think I had addictive behavior, obsession of compulsive behavior when I was very young. Very young. To this day, I suffer from it. I was 12 years old, in the 7th grade, looking for a place in the world where I thought I belonged.
Well, I used to play a lot of sports and stuff, so I guess that kind of like kept me busy. But then I knew my grades. I didn't keep my grades up one year, so I couldn't play. And then after that, I slowly started just hanging out with the wrong people. And like they say, if you sit in a barbershop, you're going to get sooner or later, you get your hair cut. And I guess that's what happened to me. Hanging out with the wrong people eventually, I wanted to do what they were doing.
I think I've always knew I had a problem from even with smoking marijuana, because it was something that I didn't feel that I had to do. It was more or less that's something that I needed to do. When I got addicted to opiates, I knew then too I had a problem because when I stopped, I was sick. So I more or less continued to do it so I wouldn't be sick.
Probably always had an addiction problem where I wanted some type of mind-altering substance, but it was never anything I was specifically dependent on.
I was about 15, I was in a car accident. I got hit by a car and I was prescribed opiates. So I was familiar with them from that point on. When I got a little bit older in my 20s, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I was prescribed opiates for pain for that, and that led me into my first cycle of many to come of opiate addiction and chasing that drug and all of the things that go along with that.
I started taking Percocets when I was 24. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and was prescribed them by a doctor. And it started off, I was on 10 milligram Percocets, which is the oxycodone with Tylenol. And then I was on 15 milligrams, and then got bumped up to 30 milligram oxycodone, and I was prescribed 4 of those a day, which is actually a really high dose, but I was doing way more than that.
At the age of 15, you know, the environment I was in wasn't a good environment in the neighborhood, not just inside my house, but outside my house. So like, I wanted to be a dealer, you know, cause I couldn't find no money. So to support my weed habit, my marijuana habit. So I started dealing coke. And the more I was buying was the more I was doing myself. And I tried morphine. I was a dealer selling morphine, but I was my best customer. How I was introduced to it, I went to a social club, and everybody in the social club was doing it. And a stranger passed me a bill that had it in there, and I sniffed it. And that, like, I thought I was where I belonged at all those years. And I was only 15 years old. But, you know, it was, that empty space in my life seemed to jive all right now, you know.
I was 17 when I first tried marijuana, but when I first started doing Percocets, I was 18. The first few months that I was using, I wasn't taking them every day. Like one, maybe a Friday or Saturday night or something, take a couple here and there. It wasn't nothing serious. But just as time went on, you know what I mean, I just started using more and more. Like once I started realizing I had to have it, I was using every day, like probably 5 or 6, like 10 milligram pills like a day probably, but then over a couple of years, it was 4 or 5 30s a day.
I was smoking marijuana for probably a little over 10 years, and I broke my foot on the job site. And it was a cast, got cast up, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me Percocet 10s. And I was taking those probably a little under 6 months, and he just flat out cut me off. And naturally, the pills made the pain just go away totally. So of course I wanted to keep that going, so I turned to the streets. Buying opiates, prescription drugs on the streets is costly. So naturally, heroin is cheaper, and that's the route I went. I'm fortunate that I only lasted with that for 5 months.
I've been through doctor shopping, going to ERs, wore out every resource you could imagine trying to get prescription pills. Heroin's very cheap. It's easy to get. It's everywhere. It's cut with really potent chemicals like other opiates like fentanyl, which is really dangerous and really strong. All sorts of additives that make the high more intense for a shorter period of time. So I think that it's attractive to people.
With me using heroin, it led me to sell it so I could support my habit. And when I eventually got caught to selling to an undercover informant, I think my eyes widened at that situation when I got arrested and got locked up. But it's still, I mean, with the addiction part itself, it didn't stop me from using, because I bailed right out of jail and went right back to it. So it was like it never left me. And I mean, I think for the most part, I fought it because, again, I didn't want to be sick. I mean, I think that's the biggest issue with that, because I don't know what hell feels like, but it sure feels like it when you don't have it. And you've been on it for X amount of years. I mean, it tears your body through a lot of different stages.
And, you know, when you're addicted to heroin, the withdrawals are pretty intense. And even though they typically only last 3 to 5 days, it's kind of like hell. And people are afraid of that. And you know, the disease, the addict doesn't want to quit anyway. So when faced with something like 5 days of throwing up and feeling terrible and body aches and all that stuff, it's pretty daunting.
I wasn't even getting high. All that matters was staying well. Because I had to do a whole lot to actually get high.
Every time I had them on, I would get up sick. I couldn't get up. I thought it was just a cold. Thought it was a flu. I would call around, tell somebody to go and pick something up for me. Then I seen myself making excuses. You know, I'm sick, but it was really the chemicals tearing my body now, and I couldn't function. So that's when I found out I had a problem. But I allowed my problem to get worse and worse. Steady stopping right there, it just progressed.
It's such a numbing, comfortable place to be when you're faced with all of life's obstacles and adversities. And
for a person to stay quit from the drugs that have developed into their addiction, they need to see it themselves that it's problematic. They have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired.
The older I got and the more intense my responsibilities, you know, as you get older, that's what happens. The downside of it is a lot more intense because of the guilt and the shame that's associated with failure and abandonment of maybe your family or your responsibilities or whatever the case may be. And that's part of what causes people to relapse too, or not escape addiction, is just the constant feelings of loneliness and guilt, you know, for not dealing with it.
I never thought I could have one day clean possible because, again, it was the thought of withdrawal, the thought of, you know, loneliness, the thought of not being wanted.
I mean, you don't really realize it till it's too late, you know what I mean? And then you have to have it. It's like, it's not, you just can't do it here and there. It's like, if you don't have it, you're not gonna feel good. You gotta do it to function. You gotta do it to anything you wanna do, you have to have it. Like a few years into my addiction, I always knew that I needed to do something about it. I really didn't know how. Like, I never been to a rehab or nothing like that, so I just thought people just quit, you know what I mean? I didn't know that there was ways to do it. I just thought you just quit, and that's what I tried to do, but it just never worked. I quit a lot. I couldn't, like Steve said, I couldn't stay quit.
So for me, what it was this time was hitting rock bottom, my wife leaving me, losing my house, losing my cars, losing my business, losing the respect and dignity of the business community.
The judge sentenced me to jail time and offered for me to go to rehab, and I knew that's what I needed, and I accepted it. I actually denied going up for parole because I didn't want to take a chance of getting parole because I know I needed help, or I would just be right back in the same situation I was.
It's gonna sound crazy. It was a bird. God sent a bird to me every morning. It was a bird. He used to come to my window sill and wake me up every morning. And I used to always say when I was using, this is my last day. After this day, I'm not gonna do it anymore, and I would go to sleep, and I wake up in the middle of the night and I say, I'm gonna sleep the day away. But this bird used to always come and wake me up, and he just send me out the house, and I'd cuss the bird out, and my father used to always ask me, what is you in there? What are you talking about in there? Like, I'm gonna kill that bird, I'm gonna poison him. He get on my nerves. And my dad would say, you going back to work, huh? I said, yeah. But I got tired of that bird. So, like I said, I think God sent that bird to me. He was my savior. That bird was my savior, something I couldn't do for myself. And I got tired of my life. I looked at my life and seeing what I was doing every day, you know, and I checked myself into a detox. You know, because I was tired, man. Spiritually, I was dead, you know, and everybody looked at me like, you better than that. So I just, you know, finally gave myself a chance, and it's paying off.
I think this time around, you know, my family is everything to me, and the only piece of the puzzle that's missing out of my life is my daughters. But I know with time, because it took me a lot of time to ruin my relationship with their mother. I know with time that, you know, me doing the necessary things that I need to do to stay sober and clean today, that eventually I'll have them back in my life.
When you're high, you numb yourself, and all of the emotions that you should be feeling, you don't feel. And then when you detox and you start to come back around and become more clear-headed, all of those emotions come back. They didn't go away, and then you have to deal with them. And that whole experience began what I guess it was kind of an enlightenment, like, hey, you know, I need to do something. I mean, I'm 43 years old, and this is where I am now.
You know, when I was high, when I was on drugs, I didn't realize how big of a problem I had until I was taken out of, you know, my environment and put into jail, and being clean and having a clean mind and actually being able to think. You know, I started to realize all the things that I had done, all the people I had hurt, all the damage I've done to myself and to my life.
That bird came along about almost 3 years now. I have a history of going back and forth to prison. That's where I've grown to be comfortable with. I had no responsibilities. I had nobody to answer to. I can get high when I want to. But as I have 2 grandkids now, and as I'm getting older, I want something different. And I'm shooting for something different.
Because you just want to get high, and if you don't have it, you're going to do whatever you have to do to get it. And that's what I did. I had first-degree burglary. I wrote the judge, and he allowed me to come here after serving some time in prison. He allowed me to come to the Jude House.
The judge gave me the option. She said you can either take 6 to 12 years in prison, or you can have the option to do the 8507 and actually get help for your addiction problem. And naturally, I took the 8507 because I do want help. You know, she actually, in my eyes, saved my life, because I don't know if I would have went to prison if I would have came home. You know, I could have easily went to prison and 9 times out of 10 stayed on the road with heroin and drugs of that sort, and no telling, I could have died. So she saved my life, and I really appreciate Judge Claggett for that.
It's hard on the family, especially my 8-year-old daughter, who I've been very close with since she was born. Even though my wife and I are separated and now divorced, we spent a lot of time together, a lot. And you know, one of the first things she asked me when I got arrested this time, and one of the few times I got to call her from jail, was, "Daddy, why did you do that?" And that was heartbreaking. You know, what do you say to a 6-year-old?
After my kids moved in with their father, they really didn't want much to do with me. They realized that I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing. And my kids are 10 and 13, so they're old enough to kind of realize what's going on. I don't think at the time they knew exactly what was going on, but now they do, because I'm honest with them. And if anything, I hope that they can learn from my mistakes and not go down the same path I did.
So I got a great family. They're still here for me no matter what. But I know I probably lost a lot of respect and trust with them and stuff like that. They worry a lot about me, you know. Not now, but they did. They probably still do. But just the stress, they stress out a lot, used to.
The rooms of Narcotics Anonymous helped my siblings. This was before I knew anything about the rooms. One by one, they started getting clean. They showed me tough love because they're not using, and I was still actively using. So, and I understood my pattern, so I understood their decisions, because I was 10 to like hurt people that I love, who was close to, who would trust me just a little bit. They're the ones I would hurt. So their tough love, like, opened my eyes to a lot of things. But it didn't open my eyes enough to stop using though. It just opened up my eyes to get away from them. You know, long distance love, you know. But like today, all of my siblings is clean. All of us.
My daughters are not in my life. I have twin daughters and they're 11 years old. And like I said earlier, I've been clean for 313 days and their mom still refuses for me to have any contact with them.
My father, he's 63, so he thinks from a different school, you know, why can't you just quit? So it's been very hard for him to see me go through these cycles, and you know, and every parent wants the best for their, you know, their kids. And my aunts and uncles, they've all turned their back on me. My cousins don't talk to me anymore. My dad is the only one now that's stuck by me. To see him come and visit me in jail and talk to him through the glass and see tears in his eyes, and he's a grown man and shouldn't have to worry about anything anymore, because so am I. And that's intense, you know.
Me and my mom have a pretty rocky relationship. I know I pushed her away a lot. I took advantage of her a lot. I mean, like I said, I've got a lot of family that I know I disappointed, and I mean, I know they still love me, and my mom is always there for me, has always been there for me. We just don't get along very well. And my kids now, it's amazing. My kids are the most important thing to me. They always have been, but now they really know it. And they've been there to support me. I mean, even when I was in jail, they came every week to visit me. And they come every week to visit me at the Jude house. It's funny, my son told me, "Mom, do you believe in yourself?" And I said, "Well, sometimes." And he said, "Mom, you always have to believe in yourself." And he started singing the song, "Don't Stop Believing." He's 10. But I mean, my kids are everything to me, and I'm just thankful that from now on I can be the mom that I should have always been.
When I got clean, it was great. You know, today it still is great. They encouraged me. You know, they had parties for me when I ain't even there, write me about it. You know, it's like, it's great. You know, it's things that we, you know, as a family, we doing what we couldn't do when we was young. You know, I'm not saying that we can get that time back, but as a family, you know.
My family, my mom mainly, like she knew something was going on, but she just didn't know what. She's never been addicted to nothing, so she don't really know much about it. And I didn't really know much about it at the time either, you know, so. They do now that I've been at the Jude house. They kind of like, for people's family that don't understand it, they have a counselor there that works on that type stuff, and they do understand it now. They at least have a better idea about it.
For the most part, they understand it because my mom is she was an alcoholic. She's been clean now for a little over 15 years. And I think last year she went back to drinking, and now, again, she's been clean since last February, and I know she understands this whole thing of addiction because she went through it as well. But my brothers, they don't quite understand. They just think that it's something that you can just quit, and I wish it was that easy. But obviously, for 20 years of me doing it, it's not that easy. So I definitely think me being clean and sober makes a huge difference versus me being in active addiction, because when I was, they very rarely wanted to talk to me. They knew I had a problem, they just didn't know how to approach it.
If you're in the throes of active addiction or beginning to use substances and you start to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this happening to me? If life is falling apart, then I think that you need help, and you need to start asking yourself, what can I do to change it?
a long time ago, if I had listened to what people were saying to me, I think I may not have ended up where I did. I wouldn't have been as bad as I was. So I think just you know, keep an eye on your environment and what's going on in your life, and if things are going downhill, you probably got a problem.
So I think behavior changes is a major start, only personally because that's what I went through. And I think if I had my mom, or actually if I had my dad that was there to you know, be on my back about it, I don't know where I would be. I don't know if I would be sitting in front of you right now. You know, with some structure from a male, for me, I think it would have made a big difference.
It's very serious, and it'll control your life. It would take everything from you. And like, don't be scared to ask for help at all. Don't be embarrassed. Don't worry about what people say. There's so many people and programs that will help you and teach you. I've learned so much from just this rehab. I've never been to a rehab, and everything they teach you like will relate to your life, and you can learn a lot from it. So just don't be scared, and just ask for help. Talk to somebody that's been through it.
I wish I grew up a nerd, because like they successful. They have families, but I wanted to be in the in crowd. I encourage the youth or people who are struggling with addiction, get themselves a chance, man. It ain't nothing fun out there doing the wrong thing. Unless you like keep on going to jails and prisons and institutions.
Or I would probably be dead if I hadn't gone to jail. I mean, I really don't know how it spiraled so fast out of control, because at the time I didn't see it. Being at the Jude House, I came to realize that until I stop beating myself up and forgive myself, I won't be able to move on and do better in my life.
I've been to, this is my third 8505, and I had several more recovery centers without the 8505. And the Jude House, I gave myself a chance, and I'm opening up to find out who I really am. I want to give back to them kids, man, like how I came up, with no activities, no football games, no boat rides. And I want to give back to not just my community, but for the youth, period. That's what I would like to do. That's what I'm shooting on. But first I have to get my education.
I think I've changed my my attitude a lot since I've been there. My thinking, my acting. I mean, that's always like a work in progress, changing your thinking and acting, but I think I've had since I've been there. When I get out, I plan on getting in the union and going to school and just doing the right thing.
What do you want to go to school for?
In the plumbers union, apprenticeship school.
There's younger guys in our program, and I actually like to help them out any way I can, because me coming up at their age, I didn't have any kind of help. You know, like I said, I felt alone, and I kept myself alone. And, you know, I look back and I just think, you know, where would my life be at the age of 20 years old if I actually had guys like me now that were mentoring me and helping me through this? So I actually feel as though I need to be on the mission of giving back to the community, because it will definitely help me stay clean and sober.
The development of the epidemic of opiate abuse leading to addiction in our community, it's a great open topic, you know, because chances are a kid in high school knows a kid who's, you know, went that route or maybe going that route. And so they have a point of reference, you know, so that can be an open discussion, because a lot of kids would be more willing to talk about that, especially if they haven't moved in that direction thus far. You know, and that gives parents a a foothold to be able to express the severity of that. You know, there's a correlation between perceived problem of a drug and risk, or excuse me, and use. So when there's a perceived problem that's high for adolescents, the use of that drug is kind of lower. But when the perceived risk is lower, the use is kind of high. So with opiates, that's where parents can make a difference. That's where educators can make a difference. That's where we can make a difference, to let them know this is no joke. You know, these pills, you know, getting a prescription because you had your wisdom teeth pulled, you know, you take the 2 or 3 pills or whatever when you feel like you can manage it without, you get rid of that stuff because it's a potentially very dangerous drug.